This morning, be looking into Mark chapter 8 as our reference point. I want to start out, though. Some people in first service said they felt bad because they didn't get to see my water bottle clearly, so I'll just show everyone here my Chicago Bears water bottle that tastes like victory. Just set that right there for the rest of you to enjoy. Got a little, it's allergy season if you suffer the same way I do, so I apologize. I got here this morning, I was sneezing, so made it through first service. Hopefully I'll make it through second without something flying out, but if it does, just roll with it. It's okay. It's not a big deal. We're going to look at Mark chapter 8 this morning. I want to look at a short little story that happened in the life of Jesus. It's one of those things, I love to take these little things and dig into them because the little stories that often get overlooked, they're kind of my favorite things to do and to kind of expound on it. So you may, when I read this story, you may recognize it, or you may not. You may recognize it when I'm done. But I want to look in Mark chapter 8, starting in verse 22. It says this: They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, "Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened, his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, "Don't even go into the village." Now, this is just a quick little story that happens in the life of Jesus, but there's a lot we can take from it. The first thing I want to look at is the fact that Jesus led him out of the village. There are many things we can look into this and figure out, why did he lead him out of the village? Was it for his sake? Was it for the sake of Jesus? Was it for the people? Why did he do it? Did he want to do it quietly? Why? Now, I'm not going to get into all that right now, but what I want you to notice is the fact that it says Jesus took him by the hand and he took him aside. Jesus gave him his full attention. Next it says, he spit on the man's eyes. Now, a couple weeks ago, Pastor Chris talked about a story where Jesus spit on the ground and he made mud and he put it on a man's eyes. Now, this is not the same guy. This is a different story altogether. This is not spit mud on the man's eyes. It says he spit on his eyes. Okay? I've always wanted to do that. I'll just be honest with you. But not like tell somebody, like just when people come forward for prayer, just walk up and just be like, bam, just spit right in their face and just see what happens. I mean, something great could happen from that. I don't know. So if anybody's not feeling well, if I have any volunteers, like I said, I got some allergy stuff going on. I know I could work something up this morning. It would not be hard. But he spit on the man's eyes. Have you ever been to the eye doctor and you had that glaucoma test? You know what I'm talking about? Think of it like that. They blast that air in your eye. And the first time it ever happens to you, you jump out of your chair and wet your pants. I mean, it's just like you don't see it coming. Just bam. And then the lady looks at you and she's like, "Well, I'm pretty sure you don't have glaucoma." I'm going, "Yeah, I need an eyeball to have glaucoma, and I don't have an eyeball anymore, so I probably don't have glaucoma." But it says he spit on the man's eyes. Now, the one thing the man did have going for him is he did not see it coming. I guarantee you that. But don't worry, I'm not going to spit on anybody this morning because I don't have that good an aim, and I wouldn't be able to hit you probably anyway. But he spit on the man's eyes. Now, this tells me one thing. If I'm going to spit on somebody's eye, I got to be right here. So Jesus and this man were face to face. He pulled him aside, and now he's face to face with the man. So this man has Jesus' full attention. Then Jesus laid his hands on him and said, "Do you see anything?" Now notice the wording of that. It's very important. Do you see anything? He didn't lay hands on him and say, "You're healed." He didn't say, "Be healed." He didn't say, "Do you see everything?" He said, "Do you see anything?" And what did the man do? He answered him, "I see men like trees walking around." And I'm thinking, of course you do. Your vision's going to be blurry. You've got a goober in your eye. You got to wipe it out. But that's not why his vision was blurry. He said, "I see men but they look like trees walking around. That answer is very important. The important thing was this: the man didn't get distracted. He didn't run around and say, oh my gosh, look at this, fuzzy flowers over here, and oh, I can almost make out the faces of my family members, and I'm only going to bump into a few things now, not everything I do. He didn't get distracted by it. Jesus asked him a question, he assessed the situation, he focused back on Jesus, and he answered the question. He kept his focus on Jesus. I think as Christians, when God starts to reveal something to us, we often get so excited the fact that God is starting to talk to us that we forget to wait for him to reveal the rest of the vision. We get so excited to tell everybody, Jesus is talking to me. He's got a vision for me. He's got a plan. Well, what is it? Well, I don't know. I didn't stick around long enough to hear it. I just heard his voice and got excited. When I was planning this sermon, a video clip popped to mind, an old video clip that I watched when I was a little kid on Sesame Street. And it's just a 1-minute video, but I think it illustrates my point pretty well. So let's take a look at this video from Sesame Street.
Excuse me, sir. Could you please direct me to the zoo?
Oh, certainly. Go?
Go. Okay, thanks a lot.
Hey, wait!
Go where?
Go over to Main Street.
Go over. Thanks, buddy.
That elephant just won't listen.
Go over what?
You want the zoo?
Yep.
So wait until I finish, okay?
Okay.
Just go over to Main Street and turn right. You can't miss it.
Gee, thanks, pal.
It's nice when people listen.
Oh, excuse me. Do you know of another zoo? This one isn't taking any more elephants.
Now that's a silly way to illustrate it, but so often we do that. As soon as God starts talking, we get so focused on the fact that he's saying something that we forget to listen to what he's saying. Many times God starts to reveal a vision for our life, or even a ministry for us to do, and we focus so much on that we lose sight of Jesus, and what God meant for good actually pulls us away from him. I want to show you something on the screen here. This is a picture God showed me one day while I was journaling in the morning. Plug for journaling. He showed me a picture of a man and Jesus. And I could see his vision path. He was focused on Jesus. And he said, I want you to focus on me. And he said, there are 3 different kinds of distractions that will come. The first one looks like this. It's really a quick, fast distraction. Something that will just blow right in front of your mind. Something the devil is throwing at you to try to get a knee-jerk reaction that you don't see it coming, and it pulls your focus and vision off of Jesus. Now, this is something that a new Christian, someone who's not real mature in their faith, that'll pull them off. Now, someone who's more mature, these distractions, they kind of come and go, and they don't really distract you from Jesus. Even right now, there's probably people who are a little more mature in this room who are saying, would you please make that thing stop flashing? It's driving me nuts. And there are small children who are going, look, flashy things. The second kind of distraction looks like this. Now you notice it goes slower, but it spends more time in the path of vision. The longer it spends in that path of vision, the more we tend to focus on the distraction and not on Jesus. And as it keeps going, it'll draw us away. These things come up all the time. The third is the tricky one, and this is one that we all struggle with no matter where you're at in your walk with the Lord. That's the fourth one. That's the blank one. The fourth one, or the third one, let's see if we can get it here. There it is. Notice it stays in the path of vision for a very long time. And when it starts out, it appears that it's pointed right at Jesus. But in reality, it's just 2 degrees off. If something is just 2 degrees off of Jesus, it's not going to hit Jesus. This is something that could be a friendship, a dating relationship, a ministry. Maybe you're doing the same ministry for 20 years and you realize, it's starting to get off of the focus. Now, if you keep your focus on Jesus, you can do one of two things. You can realize this is starting to go off course and I need to bring it back. Or maybe the Lord is saying, it's time to let that go. Just because God has called you into doing something does not mean it's necessarily for the rest of your life. There's a time where we have to assess things and say, is this starting to pull me away from my walk with the Lord? Or is this drawing me closer? If we focus on our plan for our life, or even a specific ministry, it can pull us away from God. But if we keep our focus on Him, we'll notice when it starts to go off course. Where's your focus? Now, every year on the 4th of July, we kind of have a family tradition we've started over the past few years. We all go up to Arnold's Park, which is an amusement park up by Spirit Lake, Okoboji area. It's a real old amusement park, and my sister and her family live up that way, so we go up there, and my brother comes down, my dad comes down, and we walk around the amusement park for the day. And I don't know if anybody knows this yet about me or not. Word may have gotten around a little bit. I'm just the slightest bit competitive, like just barely. Just barely. And if you want to have a competition to see if you're more competitive than me, it's on. I'll do that. But I get competitive, so we get out there and I get competitive in these games and things like that. Here's a picture of the bumper cars. That's me there with that determined look on my face. That's my brother-in-law, and we have gone all the way around the whole thing backwards to see if we could hit each other hard enough to get the wheels off the ground. That was the goal. Now, my favorite thing about this picture is that guy in the background. He is looking at me like, what is wrong with you? And why? He's got a little girl in the car. She's having a great time. He's looking like, maybe we should wait till the next round. I'm determined there, okay? I get competitive. So we get there, I get competitive with these things. And the one thing we always end the day with is the go-karts. Probably because, it's probably hard to talk to me after the go-karts. But I have won on the go-karts every single year, okay? I always win. Now, there's a picture of the go-karts here. And that's me passing my dad. This year was tricky. I got my dad on the last lap. He was blocking me all day long. And if you notice, my hand is sticking out the front window because I'm waving at him as I go by, just to let him know, yeah, that's me. I got you. But I have won on the go-karts every single year. Now, I know racing. Rubbing is racing. Sometimes you got to bump a guy a little bit and whatever, and you got to get in the way. But if you are way slower than somebody, you just need to get out of the way. Now, there was one year, and there was this kid, like 12, 13 years old kid. He was not with our group, but he was on the racetrack with us. And he was blocking me all day. I'd passed everybody. I'd lapped him once, and I was going around him again. And I'm telling you, every time I went high, he did the same. He'd go up, I'd go in, he'd cut right in front of me. He'd go down, I'd go up, he'd cut right in front of me all day long. He was bumping into me and driving me nuts. Now, listen, I don't care how old you are. If you're in the car out there, it's competition. Now, this picture here, right where we're about to enter into, you can see on the right, there's a hairpin turn right there. It's really, really sharp. And that's where I was coming in with this kid, and I finally said, you know what, I've had enough of this. I've watched this kid go around. He always goes on the outside on this turn because he can't make the inside turn. I can make that. So he'll go outside, I'll go inside. So that's what we did. He went outside, I went inside. All of a sudden, he came back down on me. Now, his back wheel hit my front wheel, and that's not a good thing. He spun himself out on my car. He spun out and went off to the left. There was screeching of tires. It sounded terrible. But when he went around, he hit the side of my car and shot me up to the right, up on the curb. So now, picture, we're supposed to be going left. He went this way. I went way over to the right, way out of play. I got two wheels in the grass. Now I got to wait for some guy to come pull me out, I'm sitting there 10, 15 seconds thinking, come on, hurry up, guy. I don't want somebody to pass me. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, bam! Somebody smacked me from behind and put me up over the rail. I was not thrilled. I got up and I thought, who is the idiot that did this? And I looked behind me, it's my niece. I said, what happened? She goes, I don't know. Now, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but here's my thinking. She saw this really fast, awesome driver passing everybody, and she said, if I just do everything he does, I will pass all these people. The problem is she took her focus off of the track and put it on my car, and when I went off course, I took her with me. 1 Corinthians 11:1, Paul said this, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Paul didn't just say follow me. What Paul said is you can follow me. I will help you in your walk with the Lord as I follow Jesus. But I'm not Jesus. If I ever go off course, don't follow that. Keep your sight on Jesus. That's what the devil is trying to do. He's trying to distract you and pull you off course. There was no reason for her to follow me off to the right. I was not in anybody's way. But she took her focus off of what was important. In the NBA, have you ever seen in the NBA nowadays when somebody's trying to shoot a free throw and the whole crowd starts cheering and yelling and chanting and everything else? Now they have these things called thunder sticks. You ever see those inflatable sticks and they clap them together and make a lot of noise? And a lot of times they'll take balloons and they wiggle them behind the backboard so that you can't, it's a clear backboard so it tries to throw off and trying to distract the shooter. Well, that's what the devil's trying to do, but he's not that obvious. He's more like the go-kart that you've been following that suddenly goes off course. Don't get distracted. The blind man didn't. When Jesus gave him part of his vision, he didn't run around and try to live his life with a partial vision. He waited for God to show him everything. You see, you can't play a game if you only know half the rules, and you can't bake a cake if you only have half a recipe, and you can't fulfill God's plan for your life with half a vision, although many of us try. Back to Mark chapter 8 and verse 25, it says, once more Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes, then his eyes were opened. His sight was restored and he saw everything clearly. Now Jesus doesn't do things halfway. He didn't say, well, if it's still fuzzy, go to the eye doctor and get yourself some glasses, at least you're better off than when I found you. He didn't do that. He restored the man's sight. It says he saw everything clearly. Philippians 1:6 says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. When Jesus has a plan, he doesn't stop in the middle. Notice I didn't say when you start something, Jesus will complete it in you. If he didn't start it, he doesn't have to finish it. That's not the promise here. But when you go by his plan, he will see it through to the end. He wasn't going to leave this man blind or half blind. He fully intended from the beginning to heal him. It's the same for us. He has a plan for us. He just always doesn't give it to us all at once. Have you ever felt like the blind man? When I left my pastor position in Fort Dodge, I felt like God called me out, and looking back, I feel like the timing was right and everything was right. But when I left, I tried to set myself up for a place to go more than once, but God kept telling me no. I had to wait on the Lord. Now, I didn't just sit on the couch and wait for an email, because that's not what waiting on the Lord is. I sent out resumes. I talked to churches. I visited churches. I talked to pastors. I even went and got another job to pay the bills. In the meantime, I was doing the things that I could do. I was doing my end of the bargain. When you're following God's plan, it doesn't mean there's no work involved or that it's easy. Psalm 127:1 says, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Now, too often we think that means God's going to do all the work while we just sit around and wait. But there are two words in there that you have to see, builders and labor. It's not God works while we watch. It's more like God's the architect. He has the plan, and if we go by his blueprints, the work that we do will be successful. Many times while I was waiting, I was tempted to go out on my own, even though God sent many, many confirmations that I was on the right track and I was doing what I was supposed to do. I could tell you dozens of stories about that. I don't even have time. But God showed me I was in his will, and he sent confirmations to me, but it was still frustrating being in that middle position. The beginning of something new, when you step out in faith and you start something, is exciting. When you finally get a clear vision as to where you're going and things start to happen, that's exciting too. But that middle section, it stinks. In the first year of my journey, nothing seemed to be happening. I was looking for a position, I was looking for a ministry, looking for something. I wanted to be doing something. What I didn't realize was Jesus was doing something in me. He was preparing me. Jeremiah 29:13 was a verse that I kept quoting throughout there. The Lord just really made it special to me. It says, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." When I first stepped out in faith, I thought I was doing just that. I thought I was seeking the Lord with all my heart. The thing is, when I look back, I see I didn't understand what that meant to seek God with all my heart. But after all that I've gone through, the dead ends, the questions, the frustration, people letting me down, people hurting me, after the struggle and the pain, now I understand what it means to seek God with everything I have. And now that's all I want to do. I want to find Him, so I'm going to seek Him. I had a time like the blind man where I was completely blind, and maybe that's where you're at today. You say, I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know what God's got for me. I don't know that there even is a reason for me here. I also had a time where I received part of my vision. Maybe that's you this morning. You know God's told you something, but you just can't seem to ever get it to kick in and get it started. 2 years ago, I felt God pressing a vision on me of discipleship and evangelism. Now, the Church of America doesn't spend a lot of time focusing on discipleship anymore. So when I was sending out resumes and things, there's not a lot of churches hiring a discipleship pastor. But I felt this is what God wanted me to do. So I tried to figure out where to fit in. And as I hit dead end after dead end after dead end, I finally said, God, I think I'm going to have to plant my own church. Because nobody wants to base their church on this. So I started planting a church. I did the groundwork. I went to classes. I picked a city. I talked to people. I looked at locations. I looked at rental spaces. I did my part. I was waiting on God and moving forward. I was preparing myself and pursuing this every way I could. Yet I was still focusing on Jesus to make sure it was His plan and not mine. Every time I took a step forward, it seemed like I took 2 steps back. I ran into so many roadblocks. It was so weird because I felt so strongly that's what I was to do. So finally, I sat down and I said, God, I'm starting to think this isn't the right thing to do right now. Back in October of 2012, I happened to be coming over to this area of the state for some reason. And so I called my good friends Jim and Lisa Machen. What I really wanted was just a free place to stay. But I said, hey, it's been forever since I've seen you guys. I'd love to come and catch up. In fact, I think I said, I'm going to be coming in at like Saturday night, like 10 o'clock at night, which is not really, that's when I came to your house, but I was here like way early in the morning, but that's beside the point. So we caught up. Now, Jim has been a good friend of mine and a mentor for years, and so we were catching up and seeing what he was doing here and what I was doing there, and he told me that his dad was going to be retiring and that he was going to be taking the senior pastorate here. And he started talking about that, and he said, there's a couple of positions I'd like to bring on. And now, there's a few people in my life, pastors, that I've honestly prayed and said, God, there's a few people I would love to work with at some point in my life, in ministry, not just on an event or something. I would love to work with them on a regular basis in the same church because I feel like we've got a good connection. I feel like we could make something happen. And Pastor Jim is one of those guys that I've honestly prayed about and said, God, I would love to work with Pastor Jim. Now, so when he told me about these positions he'd like to bring on, and he said, he said, I'm not offering you anything. I'm just asking, is that something you're interested in? And I said, absolutely not. Not at all. And I think he knew well enough to just let it go. And he said, well, what are you doing? And I shared with him about my passion for discipleship and what I was doing with this church and everything there. And I happened to come back through in December, and I was talking with him again, and he said, how's the church plant going? I said, it's not going well. I seem to be moving backwards. Nothing seems to be going forward. I said, I know that my vision is right, but I don't think it fits in the place where I'm trying to put it. And that's when he said to me, well, let me tell you about one of these positions I'm thinking about. And he says, for a discipleship pastor. And he began to share his heart with me, and I shared my heart with him, and we talked about it. And so I said, well, let's talk about this. This was in December. I said, when are you talking? He said, let's put a projected date of September in there. We put it 9 months out. And I said, okay, so for the next 9 months, some of you may have seen me, some of you may have remembered seeing me, some don't. For the next 9 months, I showed up a couple times a month, just came to church. I said, I want to get the heartbeat of the church. I want to know that God is calling me here. I don't want to just come here because we're friends or I feel like, hey, this is a great opportunity. I want to know that if I come here, it's going to be to do what God has called me to do. So I popped in. I had to laugh the other night at the hog roast because some of those pictures popped up, and I was in some of those pictures before I was actually here. If you look at I think it's even on the website, on the transition service, I'm sitting right in the front row next to Pastor Jim on the transition Sunday. I was sitting right there with him. But at that moment, I was the blind man. I had a partial vision, but now it was starting to become clear. Now, we started talking about September. It was 9 months away. We had plenty of time. Well, you know how the story ends, obviously. Here I am. I came on, ironically enough, tomorrow marks my 1 year officially since I've been on staff here at the church as a discipleship pastor. And I believe it was a God thing. It was the right choice to make. But in that 9 months that we prayed about it and we looked at it, oh my gosh, it was crazy. The devil was trying to distract me. In December, when I left here, after we first talked about it, that week I went to work and I tore my bicep tendon. And that laid me up from what I was supposed to be doing. It wasn't fully healed until May. Now, in this process, I thought, I've got 9 months. I need to fix some things on my house, get it ready to sell, stuff like that. Now, all of a sudden, I can't use my right arm. Well, that's kind of a hindrance when you're trying to fix things on your house. So I go through May dealing with that. Now, that's healed up and it's fine. June comes up, and I got sick. Now, I don't get sick, and I don't claim to be sick ever. I've never been sick a day in my life. I don't admit it when I'm sick, but I got sick. I started coughing real bad on a Thursday. The next morning, I called into work. In fact, I called my boss, and I said, I'm sick, and I got to stay home. And he goes, really? I said, yeah, really. I've been working since I was 14. I can count on one hand the amount of times I called in sick. This is not like me. I was really sick on Friday. I was worse on Saturday. On Sunday, I didn't go to church. My mom shows up at my house to see what's going on, and she's a nurse. So she walks in and sees me sitting on the couch. Now, I'm doubled over because I can't even stand up straight. I'm coughing so hard I can't. My whole stomach and chest and everything was just locked up. I was starting to hyperventilate because I couldn't catch my breath because I was coughing so hard. She just took one look at me and she goes, what's your plan? I said, so I start saying, well, I'm going to call the doctor tomorrow, maybe he'll get me in. And she looked at me, she said, you need to go to the ER right now. And I said, no, I'm fine. I'm not really sick. It's nothing. So she tried to talk me into it. My best friend's a paramedic. She made me call him, ask him. He said, I'll meet you at the hospital. You need to go. I made my mom go and find my paperwork for my insurance and tell me what the copay was to go to the ER. And she said, it's $100. I said, $100? I'm pretty sure I can wait till tomorrow. And she said, I will give you $100 if you let me take you to the hospital. I said, fine, I'll go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital. She dropped me off at the ER door, and she said, do you know how to get in there? I said, no, I've never been sick. I don't know how to get the ER. She goes, walk in, go to the left. I'll meet you in there. I'll park the car. I said, fine. I got out. I took one step, and I went, maybe I should just sit down right here for a while. And she's like, oh, great. So I sat on the bench. They came out, got me in the wheelchair. You know you're looking bad when they wheel you in, and just going down the hallway, the doctors and nurses look at you and go, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, what's going on? What's happening? So they take me in the back. The doctor says, you've got pneumonia. You're young. I'll give you some antibiotics. You go home. You'll be fine. He came back in 10 minutes later. He goes, you are not going anywhere for a while. He said, you have a whiteout. Your lung is full of fluid. You're going to be here for a few days. And I'm going, are you serious? And I'm thinking, I'm not really sick. I'm going to miss work. And how in the world much is this going to cost me? Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Going, great. So they put me up in the room, and I didn't sleep at all that night because I'm just sitting there trying to calculate in my mind. I wonder how much that costs. I wonder how much this costs. What does this cost? How much is this? I'm going, I wonder what a day in here is. And I didn't sleep at all that night. So the next day they come in, and I'm just not even concentrating on what's going on. I'm not paying attention to anybody or anything. I'm so worried about this bill. Finally, I came to the conclusion. I said, God, you're just going to have to pay this bill because I don't have any money, and you're just going to have to pay this because I can't sit here and worry about it for days. Now, I let it go. The doctor came in, and he's giving me a whole spiel on how you don't realize how sick you really are, and blah, 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 and I don't even know what all he said. He says, you realize you're the only person on this floor under the age of 65. And I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to say to that? So he's giving me this whole spiel, and he said, it's the dust in your lungs from running a sandblaster, which is what I did in the meantime. He said, there's too much dust in your lungs. That's causing your problem. You've got to get past this. He said, you really need a different job. And I said, well, it's ironic you say that because I've been talking with this church, and I sat there and told him my story. And I said, so what you're saying is maybe this is a God confirmation that I'm making the right decision. He said, I didn't mention God. He said, if it's the path you were on, I said, the path God has created for my life. And he goes, just the path. I said, God's path. He goes, whatever. But I shared with him the gospel. It opened a door, and I was able to minister to this doctor who started telling me stuff about his own life and his struggles, and we prayed together. And over the next few days that I was in there, a number of doctors, apparently I was the spectacle for being this young guy that's in the hospital with pneumonia, they came in, they all wanted to talk to me, and I brought it always back to Jesus, and I was able to share with them. I had a number of nurses in there too, a lot more than the doctors. They came in. One lady came in one time. When I came in, they asked me if I was affiliated with the church. I told them, I said, put me on all of them. Because I'd been in Fort Dodge a long time, I knew most of the pastors. So a lot of the pastors would come and visit me. And one nurse came in one day, and she just said, I have to ask you a question. I said, what's that? She goes, are you a pastor? I said, yeah, I am. Why do you ask? She goes, oh my gosh. She said, there have been so many pastors in here today, I thought either he's a pastor or he has taken a turn for the worse. Because I thought, do you normally have 8 or 9 pastors come through to somebody when they're really sick? But apparently not. But they let me out on Wednesday. I tried to get them to let me out earlier, but they let me out on Wednesday. And I went home, and a couple days later, I get this weird lump on my leg, and it was really hurt. And so I called my doctor. I said, what's going on? She said, I think you have a blood clot. You better get in here. So I went in there, and she said, oh, it's not a blood clot. You have a ruptured vein. I said, what? She goes, yeah, that doesn't happen to people your age. I said, I'm sick and tired of hearing that. I don't want to hear that anymore. And she goes, do you stand on concrete? I said, yes, I stand on concrete all day. She said, it's your job. That's what did it. She took out my file, and she starts going through. She said, you tore your bicep tendon at work. I said, yeah. You got pneumonia because of where you work. Yeah. Now you've got a ruptured vein. She goes, do you ever think about getting a different job? And I said, well, it's ironic that you say that. And I opened the door right back in and was able to share the gospel with that doctor. Distraction. Where's your focus? I could have sat there and said, God, why is all this stuff happening to me? But instead, I said, God, what can I do in this moment? You have to ignore the distractions. Distractions will always be there. Ever since that December, when I started pursuing this position, it was one distraction after another. Now, that bill finally came. Now, they send ahead of time the EOB, the explanation of benefits. And I took a picture here. This is what mine said. This was just from the hospital, not the doctor, not the x-ray, nothing else. $8,345.81. And I went, good luck, because I got the 81 cents. But Unless they'll round it down, I'm kind of at a loss. So I get but now the actual bill comes. Of course, they send you that like a month ahead of time so you can panic. And then the actual bill comes. And I was praying about it. I said, God, you're going to have to help me here. And I said, I know you'll help me. And I figured God will either give me some overtime or an extra job or something, or maybe somebody will help me out with it. But the actual bill came, and it looked like this. And it said, balance due $100. And I went, okay, something's wrong. Now, I got the bill here, and as you can see, this is a 3-pager. You got to love getting a 3-page bill. And this is not even the actual itemized one. This one is crazy. But I'm looking at him going, okay, this is wrong. My first instinct was, hurry up and write the check, maybe they won't notice. But I said, I got a call on this because I haven't paid my deductible or anything because I've never been sick, so I've never had a deductible paid. So I figured I got to owe at least $3,500, $4,000 on this, at least. So I called the insurance company and I said, okay, I got a guy on there and I said, I need you to adjust my bill. He goes, what's the problem? I said, you need to charge me more money. And he said, I'm sorry, I thought you said I need to charge you more money. I said, I'm sure that's not a regular call you get, but I do. And I explained to him, because when I looked at this, I tried to figure out why was it $100, and I realized they'd lumped the whole thing into an ER visit. And that was my copay. And I said, but I was there for 3 days. It wasn't just an ER visit. So he looked at it, he said, nope, you're right, that is way wrong, and I will fix that for you. So he puts me on hold for like 15 minutes. He comes back and he said, I'm not going to correct your bill because it's right. And I said, how could it possibly be right? He goes, believe me, I've asked 5 people because I didn't believe him either. It's right. He said, most insurance companies, when you check in the ER, they'll let you be there for 24 to 48 hours under observation. He said, your insurance company, which ironically enough I had just switched, allows 72 hours. And you were there for 66. And during that time, they can put you wherever they want. If they want to put you in a room, they can. If they want to keep you down, they can. So he said, this bill, you owe $100. Now, you can try and tell me that's not God, but I know better. That's God. I figured he would take care of it, but I would have to work for it. I never, ever thought it would show up for $100. Now, the total bills with all the doctors and all the x-rays and everything else was $10,212.10. The actual money that I paid out of pocket was $748.64. That's ridiculous. That's God. At first, this bill started to distract me, but I just kept moving along. I didn't let it get me. I just kept doing what God was calling me to do. Now, I know this is kind of a different sermon this morning. I spent a lot of time telling stories and talking about my journey to come here. But it wasn't to promote myself or say how great I am, rather to say God has come through for me. And I know he can come through for you. God brought me through a blind time and then through the fuzzy time and into a clear vision. I'm nobody special. I'm just an average guy like this blind man in the story. We don't even know his name. If God came through for us, he'll come through for you. I don't know where you're at right now, but this many people in a room, I'm sure some of you are here at the beginning where you're saying, I don't have a vision. I don't know what it is. Some of you are in the middle, probably most of you, that have some inkling of what you're supposed to be doing, but you haven't seen it come through yet. Or maybe you've already given up. Or you're just about ready to give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. Jeremiah 29:13 says, if you seek him, you will find him. Don't get distracted. Focus everything on Jesus, and he will come through for you. He will absolutely come through for you. He's faithful. He who started a work is faithful to complete it in you. If he started his plan, he will complete it. I hope somewhere along the way today I struck a chord with you, maybe planted a seed or encouraged you. That was my goal today, to encourage you to keep going, to focus on God, press in, and just keep going. He'll bring you through it. He did it for me. He did it for the blind man, and he can do it for you again this morning.